Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. My uncle and I have always been close. When my dad took off when I was just 7, my uncle stepped in and became the male role model I needed. He taught me how to fish, how to change a tire, and most importantly, he introduced me to the world of classic cars. Since before I could remember, my uncle owned a gorgeous 1967 Shelby G.T. 500 Midnight Blue with white racing stripes. That car was his pride and joy. He'd bought it back in the late 80s when classic Mustangs weren't anywhere near as valuable as they are now. It needed a ton of work then, but over decades, he restored it piece by piece until it was showroom perfect. From the time I was 12, I'd spend weekends at his garage, learning about carburetors, transmissions, and the art of detailing. As I got older, he trusted me with more serious restoration work. I helped him rebuild the engine when I was 16, replace the transmission when I was 18, and restore the interior when I was in my early 20s. That car wasn't just a vehicle. It was a living history of our relationship. Someday this beauty will be yours, he'd always tell me. Just promise you'll take care of her the way I have. I always nodded, but honestly, I never thought about actually owning it. It was my uncle's car, part of who he was. Everything changed last year when my uncle's health took a turn. At 72, his arthritis had gotten so bad he could barely grip the steering wheel, and after a minor fender bender, he decided it was time to hang up his keys. He was moving into a senior living community that didn't have garage space for residents. "I want you to take her now," he told me one evening as we sat on his porch. "I can't drive her anymore, and I'd rather see you enjoying her while I'm still around." I tried to protest, but he was adamant. The following weekend, we made it official. He signed over the title, and I drove the Shelby to my house where I had a secure garage. We even took photos of the handover and celebration dinner afterward. My aunt, his wife, and my cousin were there as witnesses. It was bittersweet, but I promised to bring the car by regularly so he could still see it and maybe go for rides. For about 2 months, everything was fine. I'd take my uncle for Sunday drives, and we'd talk about all the memories we had with that car. Then she showed up. I was washing the Shelby in my driveway when a silver SUV screeched to a halt at the curb. A woman in her late 40s stormed up my driveway like she owned the place. She had that haircut, you know the one, and designer sunglasses perched on top of her head. "That's my car," she announced, pointing at the Shelby. I looked around, confused. "Excuse me, that Mustang. It belongs to me, and I've come to collect it." Her arms were crossed, and she had this look of absolute certainty on her face. "I think you're mistaken," I said, trying to stay polite. "This was my uncle's car, and he gave it to me a couple months ago." "Your uncle?" Her eyes narrowed. "Are you talking about that old man from the senior community? He had no right to give it to you. That car was promised to my husband 20 years ago. Your uncle borrowed money from him to restore it, with the understanding that the car would come to us when he couldn't drive it anymore." This was complete nonsense. My uncle had restored that car with his own 2 hands and his hard-earned money. He'd never mentioned borrowing money from anyone, let alone promising the car as collateral. "I'm sorry, but that's not true," I said firmly. "My uncle has owned this car for over 30 years. I've helped him restore it myself. I have the title right inside, and it's in my name now." Her face turned an alarming shade of red. "Well, we'll just see about that. My husband kept records of everything. We've been waiting for years to get what's rightfully ours. You can expect to hear from our lawyer." With that, she stormed back to her SUV and peeled out of my quiet street, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. I immediately called my uncle to ask if he knew who this woman was. He was just as confused as I was at first, but then recognition dawned on him. "Wait, was she driving a silver SUV? Short hair, kind of walks like she's in charge of everything?" "That's her," I confirmed. He sighed heavily. "That's the wife of a guy I used to work with before I retired. He always admired the Shelby, kept trying to buy it off me. I turned him down every time. Once, maybe 15 years ago, he offered to loan me money for parts, but I declined. I never borrowed a dime from him or anyone else for that car. And I certainly never promised it to him." I believed my uncle completely, but something told me this woman wasn't going to let it go. I decided to gather all the documentation we had on the car, just in case. Sure enough, 3 weeks later, I found a notice of a civil lawsuit waiting for me when I got home from work. She was actually suing me for the car, claiming her husband had a verbal agreement with my uncle and had contributed financially to its restoration. The court date was set for 6 weeks away. My stomach dropped. I'd never been sued before, and even though I knew her claims were bogus, the idea of going to court was terrifying. What if the judge believed her? What if I lost my uncle's car to these people? That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. The consultation wasn't cheap, but I needed to know where I stood. "Based on what you've told me, the the lawyer said after hearing the full story. "You have a strong case. You have the title in your name, which is significant, but we need to be thorough. Verbal agreements can sometimes be upheld in court, especially if there's evidence of financial contribution." He advised me to gather as much documentation as possible: maintenance records, receipts for parts, photos showing the progression of the restoration, witness statements, anything that could establish the history of the car and disprove their claims. I threw myself into building our defense. My uncle gave me access to his meticulously kept records, folders containing every receipt, every insurance document, every registration renewal going back 30 years. There were detailed logs of all the work done on the car, with dates, parts used, and often photographs. Not once was there any mention of a loan or contribution from the plaintiff's husband. I also found dozens of photos chronicling the restoration process over the years, many showing me and my uncle working on different parts of the car. I gathered statements from my aunt, my cousin, and even some of my uncle's old car club buddies who had witnessed the restoration over the decades. But the woman, I'll call her Karen, though that's not her real name, wasn't sitting idle. She began telling people in the neighborhood that I had manipulated my elderly uncle and stolen a car that rightfully belonged to her family. Some neighbors who didn't know me well began giving me cold looks. She even created a social media post about elder abuse that, while not naming names, was clearly about my uncle and me. Then came the most disturbing incident. I came home from work to find my garage door open. Nothing was missing, but there were clear signs someone had been examining the car. They had taken photos. The camera flash had triggered my garage security camera, though the person's face wasn't visible. I immediately called the police and filed a report, then installed additional security measures around my garage. As the court date approached, my anxiety grew. My lawyer was confident, but Karen seemed equally sure of herself. She had even turned down a mediation offer, insisting she would accept nothing less than full ownership of the car. The weekend before the trial, I was organizing our documentation when I noticed something odd in one of the old insurance documents. The VIN on a policy from 1989, the year my uncle bought the car, was slightly different from the current VIN. I called my uncle immediately. "Oh, that," he chuckled. "I forgot all about that. When I first bought the car, it wasn't actually a genuine Shelby. It was a regular Mustang that someone had tried to modify to look like a Shelby. Part of my restoration was converting it properly, which included getting the correct VIN plates. It's all legitimate. I have the documentation from the classic car registry approving the authentication. It's in the brown folder marked certification." Sure enough, there it was, the complete history of the car, including its transformation from a regular Mustang to an authenticated Shelby GT 500. This was crucial information. If Karen's husband claimed to have loaned money for a Shelby GT 500 in the late 80s or early 90s, it couldn't be true, because at that time, the car wasn't yet a Shelby. The day of the trial arrived. I felt sick to my stomach as I put on my best suit and loaded boxes of documentation into my car. My uncle insisted on coming along, despite his health issues. "Nobody's going to lie about me in court without me being there to set the record straight," he said firmly. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but it still felt intimidating. Karen and her husband sat on one side with their lawyer, sending glares in our direction. Her husband was a tall, stern-looking man who kept whispering in their lawyer's ear. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, called the court to order and asked both sides to present their cases. Karen's lawyer went first, spinning a tale about how her husband had been a classic car mentor to my uncle, helping him acquire the rare Shelby and providing significant loans for its restoration over the years. According to them, there had been a clear verbal agreement that the car would come to them when my uncle could no longer drive it, in recognition of their financial contribution and guidance. "We have witnesses who recall discussions of this arrangement," their lawyer claimed, "and my clients have suffered significant financial and emotional damage from the defendant's refusal to honor this agreement." When it was our turn, my lawyer methodically dismantled their story. He presented the complete ownership history of the car, including title transfers. He showed photos of me growing up working on the car with my uncle. He presented my uncle's detailed financial record showing he had paid for every part himself, often working overtime at his job to afford special components. Then came our key evidence. My lawyer presented the documentation showing that when my uncle first purchased the vehicle, it wasn't even a Shelby. It was a regular Mustang that he had painstakingly converted and authenticated over many years. "Your Honor," my lawyer said, "the plaintiffs claim that the husband loaned money specifically for a Shelby GT 500 in 1989. But as these authenticated documents show, this vehicle wasn't even a Shelby until 1997, when the defendant's uncle completed the proper conversion and authentication process. The plaintiff's timeline simply doesn't match the documented history of this vehicle." I could see Karen and her husband whispering frantically to their lawyer. The judge noticed it too and asked if they wished to respond to this evidence. Their lawyer seemed flustered. "Your Honor, Regardless of the exact model of the vehicle at the time, my clients did provide financial assistance. Do you have any documentation of these loans? The judge interrupted. Receipts? Canceled checks? Bank statements? We have witness testimony, the lawyer said weakly. Let's hear from these witnesses then, the judge said. Their first witness was a former co-worker of my uncle's, who claimed he had heard discussions about the car being promised to Karen's husband, but under cross-examination by my lawyer, he admitted he couldn't recall any specific conversations, dates, or amounts discussed. Their second witness was Karen's brother, who claimed he had been present when my uncle had allegedly promised the car to Karen's husband. But when my lawyer showed him photographs of the car from different stages of restoration and asked him to identify when this promise was made, he pointed to a photo from 2005, by which time my uncle had already fully restored the car without any outside financial help. When it was our turn for witnesses, my uncle took the stand. Despite his physical frailty, his mind was sharp as ever. He calmly and clearly denied ever borrowing money from Karen's husband, ever promising him the car, or ever receiving restoration advice from him. I bought that Mustang with my own savings in 1989, he testified. I spent the next 15 years restoring it myself, with help only from my nephew here. Every receipt, every part, every hour of labor is documented in those records. I never borrowed a dime from anyone for that car, and I certainly never promised it to anyone except my nephew, who has been like a son to me. The judge asked Karen's husband directly if he had any documentation whatsoever of these alleged loans. He claimed the records had been lost in a basement flood years ago, a convenient excuse that clearly didn't impress the judge. The final blow came when my lawyer presented a statement from the previous owner of the Mustang, who confirmed selling it to my uncle, and only my uncle, in 1989. He had included photos from the sale, showing my uncle with the car in its original, unrestored condition. After both sides had presented their cases, the judge called a brief recess to review the evidence. Those 20 minutes felt like hours as we waited anxiously in the hallway. My uncle patted my hand. "Don't worry," he said. "The truth is on our side." When we returned to the courtroom, the judge didn't mince words. "Having reviewed all the evidence presented today, I find in favor of the defendant," she announced. "The plaintiffs have failed to provide any credible evidence of either a financial contribution to the vehicle in question or of any agreement regarding its eventual ownership." She looked directly at Karen and her husband. "Furthermore, I find the plaintiff's claim to be without merit and potentially frivolous. The documentation provided by the defendant clearly establishes both the provenance of the vehicle and the defendant's rightful ownership via proper title transfer from his uncle." She then ordered Karen and her husband to pay my legal fees, amounting to nearly $4,000. "This court does not look kindly on attempts to claim property through unsubstantiated verbal agreements, particularly when the documented evidence so clearly contradicts such claims," she added sternly. Karen looked like she might explode. Her face turned bright red, and she started to protest, but her lawyer quickly silenced her with a hand on her arm. They left the courtroom without looking at us, Karen's heels clicking angrily on the floor. Outside the courthouse, my uncle hugged me tightly. "I never doubted it for a second," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That car is yours now, fair and square. Nobody can take it from you." The following Sunday, I picked up my uncle from his senior living community for our usual drive. I detailed the Shelby to perfection the day before, and it gleamed in the summer sun. As we cruised through town, he asked me to take a specific route, one that, I realized, would take us past Karen's house. "Are you sure?" I asked, concerned about antagonizing her further. He nodded. "We're not doing anything wrong. We're just enjoying our Sunday drive in a car that's legally yours." As we approached her house, I saw Karen and her husband in their front yard. They both looked up at the sound of the Shelby's distinctive engine. I didn't slow down or speed up, just drove normally past their house. I didn't wave or acknowledge them in any way. This wasn't about gloating. It was about my uncle showing me that we had nothing to hide and nothing to fear from them anymore. In my rearview mirror, I could see Karen's husband put a restraining hand on her arm as she seemed ready to storm toward the street. Then they disappeared from view as we turned the corner. "Feel better?" I asked my uncle. He smiled and patted the dashboard affectionately. "I just wanted to remind them, and myself, that justice still exists in this world. Now, let's go somewhere nice for lunch. This old car has plenty more miles left for us to enjoy together." In the months since that day, life has returned to normal. Karen and her husband moved away shortly after the trial. Apparently, they couldn't handle the neighborhood gossip once the truth about their frivolous lawsuit got out. My uncle continues to join me for Sunday drives when his health permits, and I've become active in the local classic car community, sharing the story of this special Shelby and all it means to my family. Sometimes I think about how close I came to losing something irreplaceable. Not just a valuable car, but the physical embodiment of my relationship with my uncle. It taught me that some things are worth fighting for, no matter how intimidating the battle might seem. The Shelby still sits in my garage, midnight blue paint gleaming under the lights. Every time I open the garage door and see it waiting there, I'm reminded not just of my uncle's generosity, but also of the day we stood up to entitlement and won. Some people might think it's just a car, a collection of metal, rubber, and leather. But to me, it's proof that when you're in the right, standing your ground can lead to the sweetest victory of all. As for Karen, I honestly hope she found something else to focus her energy on. Life's too short to spend it trying to take what isn't yours. Me? I'm just grateful for every mile I get to drive in that beautiful machine, carrying on my uncle's legacy one road trip at a time. I pulled into my driveway after work, the weight of the day lifting as soon as I saw my garage. Inside was the most beautiful car I'd ever known. My uncle's 1967 Shelby GT 500. Even after nearly a year of ownership, I still sometimes couldn't believe it was mine. I was just about to head inside when a delivery truck pulled up. The driver handed me a small package, which I wasn't expecting. Opening it right there in the driveway, I found a custom-made keychain with a perfect miniature replica of the Shelby, painted the exact midnight blue with white racing stripes. A note inside read, "For the best nephew a man could ask for." The car chose the right owner. Love, Uncle. I smiled, attached my car keys to it immediately, and headed inside to call him. Some victories just keep getting sweeter with time. The next one is entitled People Story. Okay, so first thing I want to say is that I love my fiancé. He's a great guy. Whip smart, kind, funny. A year and a half ago I would never imagined I'd be at this point. We've been dating for 5 years, ever since we met. He works at a call center and I'm a postal worker. We make a moderate income, and the wedding is tentatively in April. Small, courthouse wedding with a tasteful reception afterwards. I apologize in advance for the legal gobbledygook. He hasn't really kept me in the loop, and I'm a mail carrier, not a lawyer. I don't have a head for this. 1 year into our relationship he got a notice for paternity from the state he used to live in, for a 3-year-old boy, so clearly this happened way before I met him. He thought it was ridiculous, but took the ordered DNA test. Turns out, he is the father. Insert Maury audience catcalling here. The mother was apparently mentally unwell, and it turned out the boy was in custody of the grandparents. They offered to adopt the boy if my fiancé gave up all his paternal rights. He jumped at the offer. They pulled some strings. I've heard it's supposed to be hard, but we literally flew down to his old state on the date they told him to, signed some papers in front of a judge, and that was that. I was personally ambivalent about the thing. It seemed like he just gave up all rights to his son without a care. But in the end, it's his business, not mine. I told myself I would be supportive stepmother if the boy ever came to him for help/answers when he was older. There was some messy legal business about arrears child support, because the mother apparently was on welfare for years, and the state wants repayment from fiancé. I don't know much about it, because he refuses to share. Only that it's around $20K. For 3 years. Damn. A couple years go by. I take fiancé to the DMV to renew his license because it's way past expired and he won't do it. Lo and behold, it's suspended. Why? Past due child support judgment for another child. A 12-year-old girl. $30,000. Fiancé is literally sick. And I mean he threw up all night. Worse, in order to get his license suspended he had to contact child support department in his old state and give them all his current contact info. Where he works, where he lives. Soon enough, a notice comes through HR. He's going to be garnished 25% of his after-tax pay because of the child support judgment. Read it. He just shut down after that. Stonewalls any conversation regarding the issue at all. I took up more of the bills, but now we're both struggling. We have had to move into a smaller, crappier apartment using my credit alone because his has a big fat judgment on it. He had to refinance his almost paid-off car because he couldn't afford the high payments. There's some kind of hearing coming up. I don't know what it's about because he flatly refuses to tell me. I think maybe it's to adjust the payments based on his current income, which has grown due a promotion. Either way, he hasn't bought plane tickets. Or rather, hasn't asked me for the money because he can't afford them. I think he's not going. It'll be an automatic judgment against him. Here's the thing. He could request a DNA test for the girl. He hasn't, though he's told me he's certain he's not the father. He could hire an attorney. I've offered to front the cost, but he has 1,000 excuses. He'd have to get one in his other state. They'd gouge him because he wasn't there. He doesn't have the time. Excuse. The hearing is in 3 weeks. I don't know what's going on and he's so passive about it that I'm worried. So, I opened up an official-looking notice he received a few months back, but never bothered to open. There's a third child. This one is a brother of the girl. Maybe the hearing is actually about him. God damn it. I just don't know. He has actually left the house for a long walk when I questioned him a few weeks back. I am not a nagging person. Asking him to deal with his bullcrap is uncomfortable for me too. If I have to confront him with an ultimatum, we've reached the point of no return. But I'm almost there. So here's the deal. I love my fiancé. He's 50K, for the first boy and girl, in debt that will haunt him for the foreseeable future. He won't do anything about it. Just sticks his head in the sand and hopes it goes away. Maybe he's depressed? He acts normal, as if none of this is happening. There might be more on the way, with the third child. If I stay with him, I'll never be able to buy a house. I will have to make all major purchases on my credit alone. We can never combine income. He has abandoned 3 children. I don't know the full stories of the relationship between him and the mothers, other than it was painful and full of lies. One is his biological child for sure. The other 2 are a question, but they may as well be in the eyes of the state. He doesn't care about them, other than the bi-weekly garnishment on his paycheck. As far as I understand, he's never asked about them once. I had a pregnancy scare last month. Well, actually I found out I had been pregnant via miscarriage. No condolences needed, please. I didn't tell him. It's done. But the first thought in my head after I realized, what came out, was my child would have been 4th in line for any support if things went south. Who says he wouldn't abandon me too? We do plan on having children eventually. My heart loves this guy. My head says I'll be throwing away my financial future if I stick with him. What does Reddit say? Update 1. Unfortunately, someone linked my previous post from another subreddit, so the post was locked and deleted. The basic gist was my fiancé had stuck his head in the sand and was ignoring child support notices and hearings to the tune of 50K, for children conceived way before our relationship started. After the second surprise child, he had completely shut me out on the subject. I opened up some of his forgotten mail and saw there was a notice for a third child. To recap. Baby 1, 3-year-old boy. He was able to give up his paternal rights in favor of the mother's grandparents because the mother had mental health issues. 20K child support in arrears. Baby 2, 12-year-old girl. 30K ongoing child support. I don't know the story behind this one, and he isn't talking. Baby 3, brother of 12-year-old girl. The birth date was on the paperwork, but he took that letter with him. Thank you for all of the comments, PMs, and valuable feedback from my other post. The ones that told me I, too, was sticking my head in the sand really put it in place with me. As did the ones who gave professional insight that it was simply not possible for him to have been completely blindsided with all 3 children. So I was in a mood when he got home tonight. I showed my fiancé, who I'm now calling Johnny Appleseed, thanks to a previous commenter, the letter I opened about the third child. Luckily, he didn't get all huffy about me opening his mail because I was not in the mood. Johnny's face just fell and he said it was impossible for him to be the father of the third child. He didn't know about it, not having opened his child support mail over the last few months, that the mother of the 12-year-old had won child support judgment against him for the girl, and now was clearly looking for more. I told him I thought that was BS and I wanted the truth now, that I'd been looking through his old state's law and the courts can't have ruled him the father of the 12-year-old without evidence. He pulled his usual Stonewall stuff, said it didn't matter, because there was a judgment against him he was screwed for life. He actually started to cry. I kept on him. Finally he told me the truth. He and the baby mama were in love since they were teenagers, but it was an on and off relationship. She was drama. She got pregnant and he was there for her. But right before the baby was born she told him he wasn't the father. He was stubborn and proud, and still signed the birth certificate. But he left her soon after at her request, and didn't have any contact. Why didn't he get a DNA test? It was expensive and his heart was broken. By the end of this, he was crying. I started crying too, and I told him I can't marry him right now with all this going on. OMG, did he go instantly from sorrowful to pissed. He kept asking me how I could do this, that I knew about the child support going in, that he'd always been honest with me. No. He'd said nothing, or insinuated she put his name on the birth certificate, not the same as honesty, that he knew baby mama was trying yet again to ruin his life. The judgment was already in. There was nothing he could do because the courts always ruled in favor of the mother. There was no point in trying. This was all her fault for trying to ruin his life, and by taking her side over him, I was letting her. Reddit, I'd like to say I threw in some good zingers. The fact is, when things get heated my brain stalls out. I said some things about how he was handling the situation, keeping me locked out of what was going on with the upcoming hearing, that if this kept blowing this off he could go to jail, but my delivery sounded kinda lame even to me. It's never like how I practice in my head or can type out here, you know? Then he started asking me if this was about a male coworker I had once given a ride home, like 3 months ago. If I had an affair with him. WTF? I took off the ring, his grandmother's, and told him to take it, that he needed to move out tonight, stay with someone else, and give me some space. The wedding was off, and I needed a few days to consider the rest of the relationship. He kept asking me why, like he couldn't believe I was breaking off the wedding because of a little old thing like 50K in debt, 3 surprise children, and a complete shutdown of the subject. Then he called me shallow. That money means more to me than love. It went on, but I'm already sick of reliving this. He does swear there is no possibility of any more surprise children. Period. He packed a duffel full of clothes and left, having convinced himself that I was either cheating on him or shallow and money hungry. So I spent the evening rereading comments. I've done the right thing, right? And browsing for rent sites. The lease is in my name only because of the judgments on his credit report. Ugh, this is what I've become. Lying to landlords because of my deadbeat fiancé. He probably has some sort of resident rights anyway. Meh, at least he's out of the apartment for now. I texted him a long message an hour ago. Johnny, before we join our lives together, I need to know you can handle your responsibilities like an adult. Go to the hearing. I will help you with a lawyer, with a plane ticket, whatever. If you treat me like a partner, maybe we can rebuild our relationship. I love you. He hasn't answered. I hope he listens to reason once he cools down. He has so many good qualities. I had to share the very worst in my post to you all. He would be an excellent father if he wanted visitation, and I'm willing to put in the work to sort this out and move forward with these kids if he is. He's convinced himself he's screwed for life, and I think it's paralyzed him. It's a terrifying place to be. I know. Basically everyone wanted me to kick him to the curb, but I'm hoping this break is enough of a come to Jesus moment for him to prove he's not a deadbeat. Basically, if he wants to fight for this relationship, he has to go to the hearing and handle his business. Get on a payment plan and keep on it. Then relationship counseling. Lots and lots of relationship counseling. Then, we'll see? I still may break up permanently, but at least he'll have sorted out a thing or two. Maybe I'm just holding on to hope. So that's it. I really wish I had thought of something awesome to say during the argument, but life isn't a movie. Ball's in his court. Let's see if he mans up or not. Anyone been through anything like this before? I did blindside him a little because I, too, had been way too passive in letting this slide. How do I help him help himself? Update 2: the original post was locked and deleted because someone linked it from another subreddit. I've pasted the contents in the first comment. Here's the link to the first update. I don't even know where to start. After I called off the wedding and returned his grandmother's engagement ring, he packed a duffel full of his clothes and left. It's been about a month, and I haven't heard a peep from him. I changed the locks on the apartment, but he hasn't been back for his stuff anyway. He blocked me on Facebook, and when I gave in and tried to give him a call a week later, he'd changed his phone number too. I heard he was staying at his best bro's house, courtesy of bro's girlfriend. Trust me, I went through all the stages of grief, denial, anger, acceptance, etc., and I finally accepted he wasn't coming back. I thought maybe he'd gone back to his home state to be with one of the baby mamas, but his car was parked in the parking lot at his work. I may have drove past once or twice. The hearing was scheduled for early this week. Finally, tonight, I plucked up my courage and went to the best bro's house to confront him. The least he could do is get his crap out of my apartment, right? I grabbed up his many unopened child support notices, and a picture of boy number 1 he left on his dresser. It's the only picture of the 3 kids that he has, and he left it behind. Best bro answered the door, and what followed was just about the most awkward conversation ever. I can't remember the conversation verbatim, but I asked where ex-fiancé was, and best bro said he wasn't there. He was being all evasive, so I asked if he went to the hearing or not. Best bro looked confused. What hearing? I told him the child support hearing for his 3 kids. Best bro looked super confused, like I was crazy. Then he asked if I was seeing anyone else, other than ex-fiancé. Of course I wasn't. I gave best bro a very abbreviated version. Kicked ex-fiancé out BC. He was ignoring his child support from his baby mamas. He had a hearing earlier this week. I was getting loud because I'd been bottling this up, and best bro's girlfriend came out to see what was going on. She's the one who told me. Her exact words: "Your man lost his damn mind." The weekend after I kicked him out, he went out to a bar with best bro for some good old girl bashing. He met up with some 22-year-old bartender and hooked up. Read it, he married her last weekend. Drove up to Reno, we're a couple hours from the Nevada border, and did the whole Chapel of Love thing. Best bro and his girlfriend were the witnesses. They hadn't really supported his decision, but he had them convinced I was a cheating whore, and he was so heartbroken. Plus, best bro's girlfriend implied later that he'd overstayed his welcome by crashing at their house for most of a month. I was shocked and pissed and wanted to cry because I sorta got the vibe that best bro still didn't believe I wasn't cheating. So I grabbed the court documents from my car and gave them to him to pass along to my ex. I doubt they'll open them up, but the fact they're from his old state county's child support division should be good evidence. I don't know why I should care about their opinion. Neither one of them called me during this. I thought I was their friend, too. But they believed him. Now I'm back home, surrounded by his crap, and trying to sort out my feelings. I feel like I've just watched someone blow through all the bridges out warning signs and drive off a cliff. I told my ex I'd help him get a lawyer for the hearing, help him with the plane ticket. Instead of taking care of his business, he went and married some chick he'd known for like 2.5 weeks at most. I think I'm not in the mood to drag out a calendar. Let's be generous and call it 3 weeks. I should feel bad for the girl, his new wife, what the duck, for what she's just gotten into. But she must either be a real piece of work herself or just an idiot. Who marries someone they've known for that short of time? And I know someone out there is thinking, you're an idiot. He had to have known her for longer. He was cheating before this. Well, I'm certain he wasn't. He's a homebody by nature. There was never any missing time in our relationship, and Best Bro was pretty clear they'd met at the bar that night. So basically, instead of going to his child support hearing, he was moving in with his new wifey, and probably doing what newly married people do. I hope they're happy together. Ah ha ha ha. Of course I don't. I guess my next stop is the legal advice subreddit to figure out what to do with his stuff. He might have a contempt of court warrant out for him for skipping the hearing, so I doubt he'll sue me if I toss it all, but I do want to cover my butt. I know I need to ask a question, so here it is. What in the world was he thinking? Out of all the options he had to him, he picked the very worst. What was she thinking? I loved the man, but even I can admit he's not classically good looking. He had nothing to offer but a low-paying job, and being practically homeless. And finally, what is wrong with me, that I feel terrible he's found some new way to duck up his life? Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.